6:02 p.m. on Tuesday, July 23rd. And I would like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome those who are participating in the Board of Education meeting in person and those watching the meeting via live streaming on YouTube. We would ask that anyone addressing the board to use the microphone at the podium and to identify themselves for the record. As a reminder, the link to the meeting is on the district webpage under Board of Education. The streaming will run through the end of the meeting. In the event there is a disruption in the streaming, I will pause the meeting until it is reestablished. We will first begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I am going to ask our Vice President, Mrs. Otero, to please lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance. Very much. You may be seated. Call to order. To ascertain the quorum. Mrs. Wolf, please take roll call and announce it for the minutes. Present. Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Thank you very much. We are now on item B, announcement of the meeting. Mrs. Montano, would you please announce the meeting?
Yes, this meeting has been announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Resolution and is a legal constituted meeting of the Los Lunas School Board of Education.
Thank you very much. Item C, the report on the closed session. Number 1, attorney-client privilege regarding updates pertaining to threatened and/or pending litigation, specifically discussion with legal counsel regarding the status of pending or threatened litigation involving student, staff, and OCR complaints, which is pursuant to section 10-15-1H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. Discussion only, no action will be taken. And 2, discussion of limited personnel matters, specifically A, discussion of appointment of acting superintendent, and B, investigation into board concerns and discussion of additional concerns brought to the attention of the board. This is pursuant to section 10-15-1H2 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. Discussion only, no action will be taken. As announced, the Los Lunas Schools Board of Education held a closed executive session prior to the board meeting. The discussion in closed session had been limited to the following: discussion of limited personnel matters, specifically discussion of appointment of an acting superintendent, and B, investigation into board concerns and discussion of additional concerns brought to the attention of the board. This is pursuant to section 10-15-1H2 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. No other topics were discussed and no action had been taken. We are on to item D, approval of the prioritized agenda. Mrs. Montano, are there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, Madam President and members of the board, we'd like to delete 2 items. Item L 3.C, which is the Chalmer Ford Vehicle for Safety and Security, and item K, which is the approval of professional services agreement with Cuddy Law Firm.
I would stand for a motion regarding the approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
As presented or as amended, Mr. Vickers?
Okay, as amended.
Thank you, sir.
I will second.
Mr. Vickers has moved and Mr. Bennett has seconded to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion?
Dr. Wasowski, I just, for everyone's understanding, why are those 2 items being deleted?
Mrs. Montano.
Yes, so item L 3.C, we'd like to gather a little bit more information to present to you so you're better informed on that decision. And as far as item K, it is within the acting superintendent's authority to approve contracts under $60,000. And in order to preserve the integrity of the district and to avoid any further procurement code violations, I've approved that contract.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any other discussion? I will call for the vote. Mr. Vickers.
Yes.
Mr. Talley.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Mrs. Otero.
Yes.
And I vote yes, motion passes. We are on to item E. Action is needed regarding the closed executive session. I would stand for a motion or motions regarding item E.
Madam Chair, I move that we appoint Susan Chavez as acting superintendent starting tomorrow, July 24th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Vickers has moved and Mr. Bennett has seconded to appoint Mrs. Susan Chavez as acting superintendent beginning Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. Is there any discussion? Having no discussion, I will call for the vote. Mr. Vickers,
Yes.
Mr. Tally,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Mrs. Otero,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion passes.
Madam
Meet with me
President
afterwards.
and members of the board, if I may.
Mrs. Montano, yes.
I am honored that you had the confidence in me over the past week. And your decision to place Susan Chavez in this role is the best decision that this board could have made. Mrs. Chavez is a Los Lunas High School graduate and a lifelong community member, and she has served for Los Lunas schools 23 years. 9 of those years have been on cabinet. Her entire career has been dedicated to this community. Ms. Susan Chavez has the respect of her peers, and she is always making decisions to put students first. And I thank you this evening, you did the same. Susan, becoming acting superintendent is a vote to put students first. So thank you for that. And Ms. Susan Chavez, let me be the first to congratulate you.
I would have applauded too, but I was worried about my pencil, so I apologize. You have my round of applause as well. We are on item F, the current acting superintendent of schools report, Mrs. Montano. I will turn this over to you, please, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. And our first item is the budget and finance report, and I'm going to call Ms. Sandy Tracek, Chief or Assistant Superintendent of Financial.
Estimated encumbrances, these are year to date, what has it? Nice jump from the May to June in revenue. And which then put us over in revenue more than the estimated budgeted amount to be received. So that is a good thing. The next slide below is the actual year-to-date expenses. So what you've seen in the past, I've had like kind of the year-to-date expenses, and then I also showed you year-to-date plus encumbrances of what possibly could happen. This is just a snapshot of what truly happened. So for the operational account, you see on the far right, you see what was budgeted to be able to spend in expenses. But all the way from the beginning of the fiscal year, July until June, you can see that we spent less than we were allowed to do. So that means that we will have cash carryover for next school year. So financially speaking, this year we left quite well. On the next one. This shows all the funds that we have budget authority from the PED to be able to spend. And like I said in the past, when I would show you this, this was the expenses that we have spent year to date, plus encumbrances, possible expenses. This is actual money that went out in that spent column this year, either check or wire it out, whether it be payroll or accounts payable, that was spent for the year by fund. And then it also shows the remaining amounts and the remaining percentage. Also in the past, you've seen some of the funds that were in negative. Those were cleared out and moved into the operational expense, since we cannot go over budget by fund. So I keep them there throughout the year though, so we have a true feeling of how much, like I think you probably remember that transportation has always been in the negative, and that gave us a true amount of how much transportation truly costs us at the end of the year. And then at the end of the year, then I move the expenses, so I'm aware of how much it's possibly going to cost me in the future for that fund. So if you were to compare this to the prior month, you might find that the spent column could possibly be even less than last month, because that would be, last month would have also included encumbrances of possible expenses. But this is actual true how we finished. So we finished in the black on all funds. And that's all I have for the finance portion. Do you have any questions on any of those reports?
I have one, let me start with my colleagues. Mr. Vickers, any questions, comments?
No, thank you for report.
Mrs. Otero?
No, thank you.
Mr. Bennett?
Well, thank you again for the report. I do have a question, not concerning this report, but concerning budget. We approved the budget in one of the recent board meetings. And then I believe after that, the per unit value was increased. Is that correct? And so that had a positive effect, I would say, probably on our budget. Do you know what that amounts to?
That was a bar that we just put through for this year, but that is for
Next year, correct?
next right. So the fiscal year that we are currently in, this is reporting as of everything that happened last fiscal year. So this is a
Understood.
snapshot.
I was just curious about what the difference is now in the future budget. I realize it has nothing to do with the one that you presented, but it is a budget.
Right, so yeah, the additional was $1.7 million.
Okay, so that's $1.7 million less that we'll have to dip into our reserves in the coming year.
Correct.
Thank you.
So I have a question. You said that there was a nice jump in revenue between May and June. Why would we have a nice jump in revenue?
Because of that month, we also have our quarterly indirect costs that hit that are revenue to operational. That's also when a lot of property taxes are paid, and then that kind of pumps in right at the end, so.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then with the cash carryover, if I understand that correct, the remaining 23.82%, that will be something we can add back because we kind of dipped a little bit in order to get that budget approved. Is that correct?
The cash will, but when you're looking at this, so this is how we run our funds with the state are on a true cash basis. The money that comes in, the revenue that comes in, and the expenses that go out. There's this cash basis. And then in the real world, we consider, when it comes to the audited cash numbers are going to take into consideration things like, at the end of June, we might have had people working at the end of June. That's not going to get paid until July. And there could be things where we purchased them late in the year. I'm not invoiced until later in the next fiscal year. So we're gonna be looking at everything that processes up to the end of September and looking for anything that might have been paid in the new fiscal year that actually related to the old fiscal year. And then we do adjustments. So, so the true numbers, so you can't at this point, know exactly how much your cash is going to be left over. It's going to be an audited amount. So also, payroll taxes, we collect and then we pay them later. So I'm hitting this. So anyway, those numbers are going to be adjusted. So it'll be a true audited cash number when you're looking at what we budget with.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have appreciated the detail that you have provided to the board and to the public and the transparency. I think you've set a model and I want to commend you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mrs. Papani.
Yes, our second item is from the audit committee report. And again, Ms. Sandy Tracyk.
Okay, so we did have an audit committee meeting last week. We met with the auditors and we have been providing them a lot of information. They're reviewing the stuff right now. And what we did find out from that meeting is that what we do is we provide them with some information like all these revenue numbers, how much money comes in and how much expense goes out. We provide them and then they choose which funds they're going to be reviewing on a single audit. So they're gonna look over at everything kind of at random and they're gonna focus on certain fund numbers. And they chose this year to look at all the ESSER funds that went through last fiscal year. So FY24, and the comprehensive literacy fund number. So when you look at all the ESSERs, there's 4 of those. With the literacy, they'll be single auditing five different funds. Looking at a little more in depth. So that's what they picked for those. They also, so far, the things that we have provided that they've had a chance to review. So far, they have not found any audit findings. But that we're very, very early in the process.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that is all I have for that. It was a 5-minute meeting. But are there any questions on the audit committee?
Mr. Bennett?
No.
Mr. Towle?
No.
No. I know you sit on the audit committee.
Yep, I was there for 5 minutes also. Nothing much happened.
But reporting on it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Tracy.
So, additional comments. Excuse me, I'm sorry, the 3 mil, which Miss Susan Chavez will present to us.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Wilson Schools Board of Education, Acting Superintendent Montaño. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about 3 mil, but before I do that, I would like to thank Ms. Montaño for leading us through this last week. I think she did a phenomenal job. I would also like to thank Cabinet. We came together as a team and really pulled together for our district and for our staff, and we are ready for our students. And thank you for having the confidence in me to lead our district and start school, because we're ready for our kids to come back. Can't wait to see them on August 1st. So a big part of what we've been working on is the 3 election. That is going to be on August 13th is when the ballots are due and need to be postmarked. What we have done this far is we were actually in the next co-living today. We had 3 representatives from Wilson Schools, Senator Lucas, Mike Good, and Don Biden. It did end at 3 o'clock today and multiple times, I think, in the next 24 hours. So please visit KRQE for the recording. And I think they did an amazing job promoting Wilson Schools. We also have postcards that goes to households that their voters and each voter, because we have to pay for each postcard. So we sent it out to the household. It's and starting to be received. So as soon as those ballots are at the homes, they're able to send them to the county clerk's office. We also have signs posted through the community. Unfortunately, we have this weekend, so we have to refresh and adjust those signs because my teacher did not cooperate with us. So that will be addressed as soon as possible. And finally, we send out reminder messages from the district or from our school sites. And all the school sites will have that on the school marquees. And we will be seeing a lot of parents in the next few weeks. So we will be reminding all of our community members the importance of the 3-mil election. And I will stand for any questions.
Mr. Vickers, any
And then I'll-
questions?
No, I appreciate that you're on top of that. Most of the postcards arrived at our house,
Okay.
except for one person for
Okay.
some reason, but not the postcard, the
The ballot.
actual ballot.
Okay.
Right, so. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Otero, any questions or comments? No, thank you. Mr. Ben?
No, I got the ballots, yesterday and sent them back in, so everybody needs to vote yes. That's three.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Tally?
So the 3 mil, for people who aren't familiar with it, can you describe what the money's gonna be used for?
Yes, I absolutely can. So 3 is earmarked for technology in most of the schools. It is for infrastructure and for devices. And it does help pay for some of the salaries that help support the people who need the devices and servers. And as we noticed last week, when there was a global network, technology comes in play really quickly when things go down. And so we want to continue our firewalls, our servers, our infrastructure. Unfortunately, we've been hit with many phishing emails and some of our accounts have been compromised because of that. So the 3 mil does support infrastructure to prevent that from happening.
So I have with me the ballot.
Excellent.
Who writes, what is that like part of what the 3 mil is? Is there like specific wording or do we generate that wording? Who generates the wording for what's on the ballot?
We work with some of our district council to help generate the wording based on what the 3 mil is appropriated for.
Okay, because even today at work, I had people asking me about what it was for, and of course I said, it's technology fund, it's to support the infrastructure. But it's not until at least, like halfway through the wording that it even begins to talk about the technology. And it starts off by talking about software. I've learned recently that I'm getting old. I'm just gonna read this. It says, shall the Los Angeles School District #1 continue to impose a property tax levy of $3 per each $1,000 of net taxable value of property allocated to the Los Angeles School District #1 for the property tax years 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, and 2029 for the purposes of A, erecting, remodeling, making additions to, providing equipment for, or furnishing public school buildings. B, payment made pursuant to a financing agreement entered into by a school district or a charter school for the leasing of a building or other real property with an option to purchase for a price that is reduced according to the payments made. C, purchasing or improving public school grounds. D, purchasing activity vehicles for transporting students to and from extracurricular school activities. E, administering the projects undertaken pursuant to the subsections A and C of this section, including expenditures for facility maintenance, software, project management software, project oversight, and district personnel specifically related to administration of projects funded by the Public School Buildings Act, and it continues on there. I'm concerned, and it's probably too late. I'm concerned though that when people receive this ballot, they're not gonna know what it's for. It's, we've talked about and we've kind of said, look, this is for technology. And I had to read, and you guys had to just listen to nothing until the very last phrases about technology. I'm concerned that the public still is not going to be informed what they're voting for. And I understand the importance of this. I mean, it affects our budget. And I'm hopeful that there are people watching and listening tonight, and hopeful that there are people that see those spots on KRQE, that they'll understand the importance of it. But I think that this was a miss on account of, we don't even talk about, I was bored before I got to the technology portion, and that really is, in my understanding, what this is all about. And I apologize that you're the one up there having to hear this,
No, no.
but
No.
I'm concerned. And number two, I just want to make sure that the people who fill out their ballots, and I encourage everybody to do so, that you pay attention to the instructions that are on the ballot. There is, after you seal up your ballot and you put it in the envelope, there's a spot on the back of the ballot that you have to sign and put in your last 4 digits of your social security number in order for the ballot to be counted. I hope that that they take my ballot, because I had to reopen it and sign it. So, just note, because I generally skip the instructions and just go, not necessarily practice. Just note, when you're filling out your ballot, make sure that you don't seal it until you have dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Talley. We learned lots about you tonight. We appreciate that. Very nice of you. Mrs. Montano, item 4F, please.
Yes, other comments. So we spent last Thursday and Friday with all of our administrators preparing for this upcoming school year. And it was a very successful learning opportunity. We are ready to welcome students and staff back. Teachers return on Friday, and we will be holding our yearly district convocation on Tuesday at Los Lunas High School. That's July 30th. We're going to have elementary open houses scheduled next week. And we're also holding a jumpstart day for our 7th and 9th graders, which will be on July 31st. And it's actually a very short day. It's just a couple of hours, but it gives them an opportunity to get into the building and get acclimated before that first day. So happy to have that back. And then also we have purchased all of our school supplies. Most everything is in. We have a few items that will be coming in later this week. But we're ready for that as well. And we are excited to start the 24-25 school year. Thank you.
So how many open houses occur next week?
So all of our elementary schools have a scheduled open house next week. And that would be elementaries. Our secondaries will come a little bit later because they're working on those jumpstart days.
And then the jumpstart is for our incoming 7th graders and incoming 9th graders at both middle schools and both high schools. Okay. And you said it's a very short day. Is that a half day?
I believe it's only a couple of hours that they're going to be on campus. I have not looked at the most recent schedule, but I believe it's like 8 to 10.
I know one concern that has been raised in the public a little bit has been the distribution of schedules. Have we worked through that glitch?
Yes, and the middle schools and high schools are also doing registration right now. And so they get their schedules at registration.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And that concludes the acting superintendent school report.
Thank you very much. For the public, item F, the 4 subparts were for informational purposes only. No action is needed or warranted at this time. Item G is board commendations. Mr. Vickers, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't.
Mrs. Otero? No. Mr. Bennett?
Yes, I'd like to commend Mr. Montano for taking over this last week and getting the administration training going on. And what my understanding is successful. Thank you.
And it was a team effort, so thank you.
Mr. Talley?
Mr. Bennett stole my thunder, but I just want to concur with what he said.
Thank you.
And I would like to also concur with that. And as well, I'd like to add the cabinet. I'd like to add our district administrators. Heard fabulous reports back of the energy and the enthusiasm and the excitement for this year. It left me very, very hopeful. So thank you for your work. I know that you guys have had to bear the storm many times. So thank you for your seaworthiness, sincerely. I also understand we have a coach who has been selected, and I apologize, I left my sticky somewhere, from Los Lunas High School. He has been recognized by his peers, and again, we seem to have some really nice things coming out of Los Lunas schools, and we have fabulous people that are on board. And I'm just really excited about the start of the school year and what those folks are doing for us and with us, and most especially for kids. That pulls us to item H, public comment. Mrs. Montano or Mrs. Wolf, how many speakers have signed up to provide comment at tonight's meeting?
And we don't have any as of,
Thank you
This
very
evening.
much. We are on to item I. Approval of the consent items. I would like to note that the two items that had been indicated by the board members for discussion have already been removed from the consent agenda. So having said that, I would stand for a motion regarding the consent items.
I would move that we approve all the action items on the agenda by consent.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Talley and Mr. Bennett. Mr. Talley has moved and Mr. Bennett has seconded to approve all of the action items as listed on the consent sheet. Of course, noting item K and item K and item L3C were previously removed. For the benefit of the audience, consent items are the action items on the agenda presented by the acting superintendent and staff for approval. All agenda items have been reviewed by the board members individually. If no discussion has been asked regarding these items by any of the board members, the action items may be submitted for approval with one motion or vote. The action items that are not consented will be discussed prior to action being taken, which we will have none of those tonight. Is there any discussion? Mr. Vickers?
No.
Mrs. Otero?
No.
Mr. Bennett?
No.
Mr. Talley, then I will call for the vote. Mr. Vickers, your vote, please.
Yes.
Mr. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Otero?
Yes.
And I vote yep, motion carries. We're on to item. That's a consent. This might, I'm not gonna jinx it yet. We are now on to item N, new business. At this time, I will ask if there are any board member requests for topics to be discussed on upcoming work sessions and or regular or special meetings.
Dr. Wasowski?
Quick, yes, Mr. Bennett?
I would like to have a work session on the SROs and security policy. Get that put together.
Work policies and what, Mr. Bennett?
On the SROs and security policy.
Campus securities,
Yeah. Actually, district security, the whole thing.
campus and district, okay? Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Talley,
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Vickers,
Nothing.
Mrs. Otero. I will provide Mrs. Chavez with a list. We have some policy work that we have postponed. So we will re-announce a work session on the policies that were presented for consideration by our policy provider, the NMSBA. And I will invite board members to again be reviewing some of your policy sections to see if we should be starting to update or have discussion about those, but we'll take those in a work session. So we'll schedule that as well.
Dr. Wasowski?
Yes, sir.
Did I miss the approval of the minutes?
That was a consent item that was on.
Oh, I did miss it then.
That's okay.
Someone did let me vote or let me have a comment. But that's what you just didn't.
Okay. I'm gonna go on. Item N was for information purposes only. No action is needed for this item at this time. We are on to item N, announcement of meetings. This brings us to the announcement of meetings as allowed by the Open Meetings Act and the District Open Meetings Resolution. On occasion, a quorum of the board members attend the same function, including school and district celebrations and ceremonies, as well as sports functions, conferences, workshops, trainings, community events, and possibly open houses. Board members will refrain from discussing and or acting on Los Lunas Schools Board of Education issues in those settings. In addition, only official meetings are published, and if other meetings are scheduled, they will be announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. With that being said, I would like to announce the following meetings. July 30th, 2024, the Los Lunas Schools District Convocation. It will be held at Los Lunas High School at 117 Emilio Lopez Road in Los Lunas at 8:00 a.m. This is a district function and a quorum may be in attendance. On August 13th, 2024, the Finance Committee in the Central Office Boardroom at 3:00 p.m. On August 13th, 2024, the Audit Committee in the Central Office Conference Room at 4:00 p.m. August 20th, 2024, a regular board meeting in the Central Office Boardroom at 6:00 p.m. This moves us to item O, adjournment. With that being said, this leads us to the adjournment of this meeting. I'd stand for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Bennett has moved and Mr. Vickers has seconded to adjourn the move to adjournment of this meeting. I will call for the vote. Mr. Vickers,
Yes.
Mr. Tally,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yeah.
Mrs. Otero,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion passes. The meeting is adjourned at 6:38 p.m. This is the fastest meeting this board has had this year. Thank you very much for your attendance. Time with you, please.
Oh, yeah. I'm just,